Shivoham. 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 Hum. So welcome everyone. I'll just remain with our eyes closed a little while and then focus in. And we've been focusing part of the summer on the archetypal dimension, huh? The archetypes. And with the Dzogchen masters called Sambhogakaya, huh? And to have an experience within the archetypical realm seems that one has some form of awakening, awakened awareness. Huh? One is not simply in mind alone, but makes that shift from mind to awareness, and then to awareness of awareness. And then that realm opens up. And so the unmanifest becomes manifest in many, many different ways. Huh? From apparitions of actually the deities to energy and light, space, vortexes, configurations. We'll be focusing on that today and perhaps even sharing our experience. It's not always easy when one is having these magnificent experiences. Not easily understood to one's own self even, huh? And as these experiences of the archetypical realm manifest, huh? It really takes us beyond our mind and takes us beyond the map of our minds. And it's always a dramatic experience as the light happens for each of us in its own way. Belief or intellectual belief in this sort of realm of the archetypes doesn't really mean that much because it's not an experience. And if the archetypes are any one thing, they are definitely relational and compelling. They're in another level of discourse. Huh? Archetypical experience is a relational experience and takes us beyond the mind, challenges our mind, and actually, in time, infuses both our mind and our bodies. And really liberates us to live more and more in the field of awareness with its different dimensions. But at some level or other, I don't mean just through religious means, of course, as we know, but one is in the field of awareness, experiencing these manifestations. And once we touch and enter the archetypical dimension, that field, then lo and behold, synchronicity does take place. When in mind alone, determination takes place. Pretty determinated place. Not many degrees of freedom, sort of locked in, mind and circumstance. But as we enter into this awareness and the archetypical begins to manifest, however that is for you or for me, then synchronicity starts to happen. Good luck manifest. Plain old good luck. O fortuna, right, as they say in Kamina Bharana. There's always been this awareness of the archetypical dimension of reality and its intimate influence in human experience. And by influence, I don't mean outside of human experience, like it's causing. It actually is human experience. It is manifesting human experience as us, with all our different dimensions. And as Pete, my son, points out, it's also directly expressed and sustained in astrology, cosmology. And it's the cosmological expression, one's code, if you will, one way of coding the archetypical realm, this presence of light and energy, creating and manifesting everything and anything. The elementals, out of pure potentiality. Ground awareness, to use Dzogchen language. Dharmakaya, to use Buddhist language. Shiva, to use Hindu language. The elements begin to manifest. And swirl and turn and start becoming everything and anything. Including our mind, including our body, and including our own awareness. So, as we know, archetypes can be understood and described in many, many different ways, depending on traditions and cultures. And it's also very multidimensional. One of the consistent ways of articulating the archetypes in so many traditions is of the gods and the goddesses, the deities and dakinis, the devas. And they give expression and manifestation of human awareness. And these powerful numinous, great word, numinous, luminous forces and presences, their presences that are personified, symbolize the deities and for other forms in both Western and Eastern traditions. If we look around this little room, there's all sorts of little images, imagos of the archetypes, that dimension of our own experience. And so these archetypes are like essences, energetic, luminous essences of primordial awareness or consciousness that are eminent within primordial awareness, as primordial awareness, and then primordial awareness manifests itself, herself, ourself, as the different dimensions of reality, from pure potentiality, pure no-thingness, pure openness, nothingness, light, light becoming energy, energy becoming everything and anything. So from potentiality, then the light, the vortexes of the light, Sambhogakaya level, to use that metaphor, then forms the light that we see both within us and around us, Sambhogakaya, and then in being incarnated into human experience as us. That's why some of the yogis will say, wherever they go, they see the deities, or the guru, or the different devas and gods in us. Just like we do, experience them in us. And so these timeless essences of awareness, primordial awareness, ground awareness, informs the particular concrete experiences of our life, of our person, of our situation, life after life, death after death. And it's not like it's far away. It is us. There's no distance. Just like the statement says, the Dharmakaya manifests in the expanse of phenomena. So phenomena is archetypal. And this understanding is given expression in various forms of history, of spirituality especially. For instance, shamanistic. The shamanistic traditions are trying to evoke and bring forth these divine dimensions within ourself and our circumstances. The Gnostic traditions, the alchemical traditions, medieval alchemists trying to bring forth these dimensions of knowingness, of relatedness into our circumstances. But there's a lot of variation in range how we look at this. Some look at it as simply psychological images, Some look at it as hallucinations, hallucinatory experience, right? That's why it's very puzzling for state colleges when people approach them who are having these experiences, like many people here. They don't know where to fit it. You with me? And more often than not, it is conceived as an hallucinatory experience, hallucination. Some kind of mind function alone, compensatory, either from a genetic point of view or some distortion of self or some interpersonal compensatory thing you're trying to make up for. And that does take place. Some people have hallucinations, with me? Wish-fulfilling images. But actually nothing much happens. And there's a whole other range. Even in the spiritual traditions, a lot of these manifestations, these apparitions, are looked down upon, unless you're a saint. Now, if you're a saint, it's okay. And you have official approbation, then it's okay. But for ordinary people, not good. Bad form. Suspicious. This is true. And with those attitudes, then the natural unfolding that almost everybody here has had in childhood is muted. Out of childhood, baby gnosis, direct perception opens up for us through our experience. And with that baby gnosis, this different dimension, baby direct perception, it emerges, The light emerges, forms emerge, companions emerge, divine states emerge. And then, as we grow, our mind is being created more and more and more, in quotes, in a realistic way. And with that, as object relations form, then this more primary perception is dropped to the background, and then the object relations give us a conventional view of the world, in certain traditions more than others, certain suburbs more than others. Say yes if this is making a little bit of sense to you. The very same people who have baby noses, but it's not quite closed. And actually Freud had a word for this foreclosure, and I'm rambling from my notes, but we'll see what happens. And he called it foreclosure. He actually spoke about this, a natural, not repression, as a natural foreclosure, where childhood perception is closed. You with me? And one becomes more conventionally realistic, okay? Some would say that's the loss of childhood right there. And then people who happen to have that benefit, it's not always easy because of the sensitivity of this direct perception into phenomena, into people, into situation, into energies. And it's not easy to process. You with me? In certain traditions they do, though. You have mentors. You with me? You have early mentors who actually help kids process this way of perceiving from the very beginning. In fact, certain children are chosen, taken out to, like Dr. Dang, who used to come and do Qigong here, Yen Chin, or different, to people, kids who have that perception, oh, well, that person has it. They're mentored in how to metabolize and assimilate this experience. Nonetheless, as Pabba describes, since we're all beings of light, more or less, good times or bad times, that light will have a breakthrough. And as that light breaks through, and its archetypical energies breaks through, then we're going to have some difficulty with that, whatever age it might be. 19, 20, 40, 77. As it breaks through, there's a fragmentation of the previous organized cognitive styles. Say yes if that's following. That representational world starts getting undone, not from the outside, but from within. It starts to fall apart. And when that anchor starts to fall apart, and the meaning that that anchor gave, then one can find themselves falling, to use Winnicott's words, into a meaningless life. Because the meaning, language, connotation is dropping away. And then so a raw experience begins to arise, a primal experience, primitive if you wish, of the light. And it begins formulating for us. And we begin to relate in De Nueva Vita, to use, who's the guy that wrote the De Nueva Vita? The medieval thing, heaven, hell. Dante, De Nueva Vita, the new life, because his life fell apart. And then he began experiencing this, what we're talking about right now. Then he wrote that great text. The new life starts to arise and open. And one begins to experience the light in one's own self, in other people's bodies and minds. And what's amazing, it's both in the good and the not good one experiences that light. That's always a challenge, that light seems to inhabit every place and everyone. Even those people who disgust you so much, at least me. So it starts taking us beyond the pairs of opposites and dualities. There's archetypes. We'll continue on here. So this whole issue of imaginary cognition to the actuality of presence. Is this imaginary, or is this the actuality of presence? And I met Tibetan lamas of the Galupas. This is not anti-anybody, but they think much of this is psychological. They're very psychological. They don't think it has an ontological base to it. So it's like an ancient cognitive behavioral system. Shape your thoughts and you'll be a better person. You with me? In other traditions, the Nyingma, Kagyu, there's actuality to this. You know, but there's always range. There's always range. And the same thing in psychology. You know, if you look at psychology, Freud came, and Freud began to, is this okay where we're going with this right now? I'm drifting away. Freud came, and as he began to, in that intimate way, that relational way that they studied human experience, this arriving of these energies, because they were very interested in energy and meaning. Freud was interested in energy and meaning. The energy was called what? Cathexis. The economic theory was cathexis, energy. The whole, read any Freud, and you will have a whole discourse on energy, and what energy is and where energy is at. And the other is meaning, and how energy and meaning goes together, okay? And as he looked at the meaning just of people's personal things, how these same themes kept arising and arising, and he began seeing these same things in Greek history, the heroes in Greek. And so he then began using that mythology and that collectiveness of that method to look at things like Oedipal issues and things like that. You guys follow me? And he began opening the door of an archetypical dimension. You with me? But again, he really wanted to be a scientist. And as soon as you want to be a scientist, and you foreclose human experience as evidence, and you want to get some other sort of facts, you can start running into problems. But then he had this student, Carl Jung. And Carl Jung had a very broad education. And his education included medieval studies and alchemy. And then when it was in the formulation of psychoanalytic thinking, he began to bring forth the realm of the archetypes. Huh? And that this dimension of form being formed by fields of energy. He was a field phenomenologist also, fields. And he would wonder, how if I'm projecting on you, how is that projecting, where is it coming from? And he began to discover the medium of the field, huh? And that passageways goes from one to another, but it does have archetypical dimensions, huh? The archetypes. So he really, in the West, had such an amazing influence. You with me? Perhaps less and less in psychology, because poor psychology always gets limpid after a while, but where these archetypical energies and how to relate to the archetypes and understand the archetypes, both in their good forms and their terrible forms, and how that influences our psyche. He also had the thought that if you can relate to the archetypical dimension of a person, it was more primary than relating to their mind alone. It's more powerful than mind alone. And if I'm in my mind alone, I can change some things. But the actual force, the actual way I'm being in this world cannot be changed unless some sort of way that dimension's opened up for me. Whether through dance or art, aesthetics, whatever. So in psychology, the magnificent work of Carl Jung takes the seeds of Freud's mythological understanding of psychodynamics of human experience, and he describes archetypes as primordial forms of psyche or in psyche, or as psyche, that compel human experience in love and in hate, and create this collective shared unconscious. We may say linguistic collective unconscious, or symbolic unconscious. And I'm using that word that it's not the sealing code of id instinct, so that's there also. But the collective unconscious is the way we give stories and narrate this experience, life after life, century after century. It is a symbolic function transforming this over how we see this, the stories we tell. You guys okay with this right now? So we may say that in our human experience, just here sitting in this room right now, today, at this moment, in its concreteness, me and you, us and them, here we are, is itself reflects this primordial configurations of a field here that give us a dynamic continuity, huh? That this whole thing can be looked at as a manifestation of a deity, or the primordial energy, or the archetypes, huh? And we can lean into and take from and deepen what's taking place, both in collective relationship and intimate relationships, huh? So a lot of practices of bringing those energies forth really help enrich and transform the more conventional configurations of our culturally based mind, which happens to be very materialistic. It's just stuff. So, archetypes are cosmic experience that we all participate in and express in thought, imagery, and experience and action, but most specifically action. And ultimately, archetypes are the manifestation, the expanse of ground awareness or divine awareness, becoming everything and anything. And to actually experience them is a gift of gnosis. That mind alone, my mind can think it, my mind can understand it, sort of, but my mind doesn't directly know them, or experience them, or embody them. So just as human beings are forms of light, the archetypical deities are forms of light. So archetypes are both objective and subjective. They both are in me, arising in me, and I may have the good fortune to experience them coming in front of me or within me, or I may have the experience they're also objective as what's the configuration of situations, of cultures, of moments at this moment, and then also they're also manifesting in people. And to enter the realm of the archetype realm is to enter the realm of synchronicity or co-emergence. One of the interesting things about all this is the co-emergent quality of archetypes. Okay, so if one of you or all of us are entering the archetypical realm at the moment, it is a co-emergent process. So one of the questions that comes up is, like when people come to visit us in our little work as therapists or whatever we are, friends, how to know what's archetypal. And what is that word? An hallucination. How to know that? Do you ever think about, I have a lot of time on my hands, but how to know what's archetypal? What is a manifestation of the divine? What is a manifestation of consciousness? And when is this something else? And the only way to know it is to experience it and become familiar, which a lot of us are, because we share these experiences. And one of the things, I mentioned Mary for a moment. We had a visit one time together when she was coming. Marjorie had asked her to come see me for a brief visit, just to talk about some of the esoteric things she was going through a number of years, 5 years ago. And and she comes and just in about 2 seconds she gives me, and she's going to go much more on this on Friday, a theme of what's been happening for her. But that story was just a narrative. That wasn't where we're going to find what's actually happening. So we both close our eyes. We go in. We go inside to inside. We enter into awareness. We can do that right now with each other. We go beyond our mind a bit. If I was only my mind, I would never understand what was taking place in a billion years. I would never understand it. And I would probably have lots of prejudice about it. I would be in an objectified state. And unfortunately, in an objectified state, an archetype will never reveal itself. It will not reveal itself in objectified states. A person can know a lot about tankas, know everything about tankas, and yet how much they cost, is this one worth anything or not? But unless that door is open to awareness, that person will miss what that iconic doorway is opening for him. So unless we enter into the doorway together, co-emergently, not big dog, little dog, the the big dog, little dog phenomena, the guardians of sanity. So if we enter into this co-emergent process, it's always co-emergent. So we enter this co-emergent process, then we enter into that timeless awareness together, beyond mind. And then I remember asking Mary, well, would you mind describing these experiences of these deities? And in this place she starts describing them, and at this point we're in one field together. There's me, her, and that. And at that moment I can feel this, what she's describing, taking place in my body. Okay? Arising, opening, centers opening in me, the Buddha, Christ consciousness. I move, yes. There's always movement with this. There's always movement. Yeah. We sat a while. I extended to her. She described exactly what I was sending, this energy to her. Everything became brighter. And I knew that she was a person who was having awakened awareness, live light manifesting in her. And we talked about that to each other. She talked to Marjorie, and then how to find a place where she could help this contextualize. And so happens the Karmapa was in town that week, and one thing leads to another. And she'll tell us a little bit about that later on, okay? But to know this, we have to be in awareness. So let's sit for a few minutes. And so we're talking about this wonderful topic today. That's why in our little seminar, we say the teacher is the field, right? And when we're in the field and we start articulating the field, then we all hear what's being said, both through words and symbols, but also we experience what's being said through the field itself. You with me? And by having that practice, we actually gain, as ordinary people, without any special outfits, we start having a perception. Our perception gets better. Because an archetypical experience in you, if I'm participating in that with you, I am now participating in that with me. And that begins to open in me. That's why it is co-emergent. Say yes if this is making sense. And that's why having this capacity and articulating it with people is really, really useful. It is not information. 3 eyes, 7 arms. It is rather informing that takes place in that moment with each other. 2 awarenesses are better than 1. And out of that informing, the light becomes more embodied. And embodiment is not simply a private experience, as Maurice Merleau-Ponty, and he called it intercorporeality. Typical good phenomenological word. Intercorporeality. So we're sitting here next to each other, and yet with that field phenomena, the body, the embodiment of this, is beyond our bodies, and there's a connection of the mysterious conjunction between each other, even though there's space. Say yes if that's making sense. Some people get confused about that. A lot of the tantric masters got confused about that. And they thought that this intercorporeal experience had to be sexual. You with me? Bunch of guys in a monastery, a lot of time on their hands. What could you expect? Look at I'm sliding. And you read the Havadra Tantra and things like this, and the tip of the penis is divine. I felt that way when I was 14. Maybe 17. But actually this goes beyond that, you see? This doesn't negate embodiment and flesh at all. It just doesn't stop there as the big signifier. Say yes if this is making sense. There's a lot of confusion in this topic. So let's get back to our awareness. So let us share some experiences today as we hold awareness of the manifestation of the archetype. Now we've done this the last week, the last 2 weeks we worked with each other. We're not doing that today. We're just going to articulate rather directly your experience out of the realm of the experience you've had of the manifestation of the archetype. And sometimes the archetype is without anything whatsoever. It's pure presence of the Dharmakaya. Not easy to put into words. Not easy to put into words. And sometimes it's the manifestation at the Sambhogakaya level, right? The forms, the energies. Sometimes it's vortexes, space, tigles. And sometimes it's another person. Suddenly there is a person who is the deity in front of you as flesh. As flesh. So the Sambhogakaya, Dharmakaya, Nirmanakaya, right? There's a little Buddhist lingo here, but you'll see this in different things. So let's hang out for a moment. Let's extend to each other. Because if we extend to each other, we extend to each other's present. We extend to each other's past. And we extend to each other's future. And rather than wait for volunteers, I'm just going to pass the microphone to you, okay? And if you really want to pass, you can. But it's best not to. And even if nothing's happening, or nothing has ever happened, it's better to put that into words. Or if you're shy of describing this, it's so intimate, it's best to put it into words. Because every time we put something into words, the light is coming into this realm. Somebody would say that. So I'm going to ask our guest, Mary, if you okay to describe any experience you'd like to.
Any experience now or ever?
Whenever.
Well, let me just say what a surreal experience it is to be sitting right between my two former therapists. For starters. I'm trying so hard to appear normal. It's true. It's really true. I don't really have anything to share, certainly for the moment. I'm actually struck by listening to you and the words that you have. When I came to see first Marjorie and then Rudy, I had been having these experiences for 11 years, and I was quite unfamiliar with anything to do with religion or spirituality, and certainly the language of any kind of conscious stuff. And so it was, I had many failures in trying to find help with what was happening. And the more that I had these other experiences in these other realms, the more insane this world seemed to me. And trying to put those two things together was really quite challenging. So I came to see both of them after a serious suicide attempt in 2011. And So much of my experience in this moment is gratitude, in addition to surreal. But I was struck as Rudy was talking about, much of the sense of feeling lost is because of the lack of language. Because there was no way that I would have this kind of language. Even I only learned about what co-emergent is on Monday from him when I came to see him and talk about today. I didn't even know that. I'm still very much in the dark about so many things. I live in a nunnery now in India, northern India. I live in a Buddhist nunnery, thanks to Rudy and Marjorie. And even there, I don't read text. I don't pay attention to a lot of other things because I have this direct connection, and I really try to remain very pure and clear in that. So I'm already learning so much, but I really I'm thinking about all of the people that are hearing this, because I saw so many therapists over those 11 years, not just therapists, but Reiki practitioners and shamans and acupuncturists and allopathic physicians and other people that didn't have the skills to help me. They didn't have the knowledge to guide me. They didn't know what to do. They didn't have any of that kind of information. And so we were both sort of failing in those settings. And so I'm really sitting here very struck with the gift that you give all of us in doing this. That's my experience in this morning. Me too, Rudy. Thank you.
It's been 5 years, too.
5 years. It's 5 years. And if anyone had said, Marjorie, we sat down here and Marjorie whispered to me, who would have thunk it? It's really such a different life in this moment. And to be coming back around now for the first time, I just saw Rudy for the first time in 5 years. And my life is completely different. I was completely set on that course. Thanks to Rudy. He was the first one when I had this metaphysical event with him in his office, and I just said point blank, so am I crazy? And he's like, oh, not only are you not crazy, you have a really profound gift of insight. And that the problem with me was that most people will study and train. This is exactly what you said. Most people will study and train and meditate to go from A to B to C to get to the Z of spiritual wisdom, but I just jump from A to Z. But the problem is Z has no context for me because I don't know B, C, D, or whatever. And so then my course was set to go sit and let the rest of it kind of catch up to me. So I'm eternally grateful, my friend.
Co-emergent.
Co-emergent. Now I can talk about that.
Just a great big old huge heart right now. And gratitude also. And when you're talking about the archetype, just the sense of presence in the room, which I experienced with you in all of my trainings, which set me up to be able to help Mary and get to you. And then what's followed since then, I'm assuming you'll talk about later, but the quality of presence that you're able to open up in this room. And certainly I have benefited from that as a therapist, and people still are. So.
I love what you're saying, because one thing leads to another. And as one of us has this experience, then actually it is really passed on from one person to another. And then that person incarnates it with their own style and own language and own thing, which is really cool. Yeah. So it's not one style, it's not one outfit, it's not one language, It's just really great.
Just one other thing about back then when we were first meeting, because she came to me after this suicide attempt. Bare, she'd lost a lot in her life, just about everything, and so is she just this regular psychotherapy patient? But as I was sitting with her, and in spite of all the sadness and loss and fear, what I felt in her presence was a great deal of love, which is what helped me feel the difference between hallucination and revelation.
We'll just pass the microphone down, and again, we'll pause now, and you can share anything you'd like, but if if you have arising in you either the memory or the live experience of the archetypal, it would be great also to share that at this time, whatever that means for you. Because in you articulating that, we will have that experience at some level. You can just pass it to the lady next to you. You might be able to get a little echo from the thing there by the speaker. That's okay though. You can just lean next to Marge a little bit.
Okay.
You'll be fine.
What's coming up for me is an experience that I had that, because of what we're talking about, helped me kind of set myself firmly on a spiritual path. And I think that that may be a good experience.
Great.
Okay. So it was 1976, and I was in the ashram, it was where Muktananda was at the DeVille. And I had realized that I didn't want to stay with my husband at the time. And my life was really falling apart. I mean, seriously falling apart. My parents had pretty much thought I was in a cult. I had changed my name. Everything was everything that I knew, and that's why I'm bringing this story up. Everything that I knew was just gone. Gone. I mean, really scarily gone. And I was traveling in a Volkswagen van with my son, who was about 4 at the time, and in New York, and on food stamps, and not even knowing how I was ever going to pay a bill, but knowing that I just had to be there, but at the same time incredibly resentful. So there was this intensive, a 2-day meditation retreat, and I was at the back of the room with about 800 people in the room, and I was crying, and it was a pitiful crying. It was a really sad crying. I was crying because I felt my life was falling apart, and it was all Muktananda's fault, and why did I do this, and everything would have been okay if I had just never met him, and I could have just had a normal life. And I was really pissed off, and in my mind, I was screaming, saying, if you are for real, come over here and show me. Just come over here and show me that you are the real deal. Otherwise, I'm out of here. This is just ridiculous. And I don't know what energy compelled me. I don't know how this had actually happened, but there I was sitting there crying. And so when I realized that he wasn't coming to me, I went right up to the front, right up to the very front where he was sitting on a kind of low stage. And I just sat there like right in front of him. And I was still in this kind of like, you just ruined my life. And he didn't even open his eyes. He just took his feet out from under where he was sitting, and he pointed the soles of his feet at my face. And I saw in the soles of his feet, with my eyes open, the whole universe going by like a movie in his feet. There was oceans and trees and cities and people, and there's this whole cacophony of everything that was going on for about 2 minutes. And I was looking at this, and I was just like amazed that this was going on in the soles of his feet, a movie. And then I heard his voice so clearly in my head. He goes, "You're worried about your poor little old life, and I'm giving you the universe." I was like, okay, I guess it's for real.
archetypal. Well, first of all, I'm really struck by what you were saying about your gratitude, and that really resonated for me because I'm so grateful to be here and to have had this years with Rudy and to have a group of people I can share with, because otherwise I would be very isolated in these experiences and keeping them very much to myself, because sometimes people do judge and sometimes people don't get it. It does seem kind of crazy. And along those lines, I'll share something that's been happening very recently, which is when I do a little seminar in Annapolis on Sunday evening. And ever since Mariel connected with Nityananda here, I have been having these powerful experiences with him that I've never connected with him prior to that. And so sitting in meditation in this that I'm supposedly teaching, my belly is starting to go like this. And it's just like all the way up going like this. And the first time it happened, I pulled back because I didn't want to look like a crazy person. I felt like I was going to break apart. And I didn't want to do that when I'm trying to teach. So I pulled away from it. And then I was so regretful that I kept trying to recreate that experience at home. And it didn't happen until the next time I was in the group. And so I decided to just lean into it and stay with it. And my body starts doing this thing. And of course, everybody's got their eyes closed, at least as far as I know. So I'm thinking no one can see. My whole body is just like puffing out like this. And because of all this time I've had here, I could just metabolize that experience. And I didn't break apart, and I didn't do anything bizarre. And it just, as long as no one was watching my stomach go like this. And it's just so incredible to have access to that kind of experience, and to have learned over the years how to contain more and more intensity.
Perfect. Padmasambhava, when talking about the awakening of awareness, he uses this word, snigpo. Can't say it right. S-N-I-G-P-O. And he says this is the whole thing, intensity. And though there's vast stillness, there's even intensity to the stillness, like this mixture of intensity. Snigpo, so that experience is snigpo, the intensity. And that intensity, as we can go with it, it does everything and anything. It is the mover. Thank you. I'm going to pass it to Dawn. Dawn, would you mind sharing some of your experiences maybe with that meetings?
Okay, I'm going to start with I've always had the sense of this comforting presence, which was actually outside of myself, and was always Mary. And I think it started when I was about, 9 or 10 years old, and I was crying one time, and I suddenly had such a sense of comfort. And it's right there. It's always on the left shoulder, or over there. But there's a spot that she always is, yeah. And then when I started coming here, we started talking about the Dakinis, then I started seeing them too. And I'd have Yeshu Toggle that's right at my heart. And she's just like Mary, and she's beautiful and young. Then there's Kira Cooley, who's in my heart, and that has the fire. And then Shomanagma, which is making things disappear, And I have found that whenever I'm really upset, and I was upset this week, I can turn to them, and they come to me. And it's very comforting. It's just... it gets me through these things because they're very real to me.
Thank you so much. And Carolyn?
Continuing on the Mary theme, what comes to me is in October, well, first of all, what comes to me is through trauma, is the invitation to profound transformation. And I've gone through a traumatic divorce over the last 5 years. And in October 2013, Patricia and I went to Lourdes in France, where the Divine Mother appeared to Bernadette. And we were led in a group by a healer, a fallen away Catholic, whatever you want to call her. And the last day we were there, she told each of us we had an appointment with Mary at the grotto. The grotto, of course, is where she first appeared to Bernadette. So I went for my appointment, and I was in the throes of this trauma, just I didn't want this divorce, and my husband was blaming me for everything, and I was sitting there watching these mostly disabled people go through the grotto, and with the most beautiful expressions on their face, and very clearly I had a message from her calling me. She called my name 3 times, and then she gave me a message about how I needed to come home to myself and how the future would be joyful. And it was so real. Well, I mean, it was the truth. It was Mary guiding me. And ever since then, she comes to me in meditation regularly. I can call her in, and the guidance I get is always the most appropriate for me. So she is my main archetype. One other thing I wanted to mention was maybe a year after that, I was at our beach house by myself, lying in bed reading a book, and I looked up, and to my right there was a being, and I couldn't tell whether it was female or male. It was dressed in a long white top, long sleeves, long loose pajama bottoms, and it was just there facing me. And I was so thrilled. And it only lasted about 20 seconds, and then it left. And I know it was a being. It wasn't a hallucination. It was there, and I keep asking it to come back. And so far it hasn't, but it was such a great affirmation of being able to manifest these beings, and it was wonderful. So thanks, Rudy. You've also opened up the universe to me too.
Just say this quickly. When I was a child, and I've said this before in here, but I felt the presence of the Blessed Mother, and I was I knew I was very holy. There did come a point where I was like goody two shoes, but when I was very young, I was just very good, and I knew I was very good, like goodness. But I was frightened that when we got to school, they told us, about the Lourdes and Fatima. So I was terrified the Blessed Mother would come at night, and so I would ask her please not to appear to me. But what I experienced this morning, which is something that is like this intense. It's not a person. It's not something visual. But it's like a shift in my experience of life. And this morning, like I am so interested in. My usual experience is just always tinged with judgment, and which pushes me, there's a feeling of me just being a single person in a mostly nasty world. What happened this morning, which has happened before, is that this, like, everything melts away, and like Donald Trump is just as holy as the Dalai Lama. And there's just this ocean of love, and there's this, the litter on the street is just as precious as the, pristine mountains. There's no difference, and it's real because it's not something I create. It's like something that comes over me, and I'm in this other place, which is real.
first of all, I'm very, very grateful to you, Mary, for your walk and your courage. And thank you for coming today. And I also, when I was a little girl, had a lot of connection with the angelic realm and used to travel at night with a being that would take me and show me that there was more there than there. And then that foreclosed, and it really wasn't until after I had a life-threatening experience that I started having more experiences again, and it was really, again, coming to Rudy and being shown that there was another way to deal with trauma, and that trauma could be transformative, and it has been completely transformative in my life. And so the experiences I've had have been sporadic, but very powerful, and most of them have come from the Blessed Mother in many different forms, and usually they come at a time that I feel like there's still a part of me that forecloses those experiences, so they usually come out of the blue, like I'm not even looking for them. And one came that really continues to nourish me. After I had done a sweat lodge, I was in a pond and I was just floating on my back, and then involuntarily my mouth just opened wider than I could ever imagine it opening, and this huge ball of light just came into my mouth, and it's like at times I still feel like I'm metabolizing that ball of light. And it was so powerful, and I feel like it happened very soon after the trauma, and so I feel like it has almost been like a light from within that's drawn me on this path to becoming who I really am. And it didn't have a face, it didn't have a personhood, it just had a beingness to it.
I'm also so moved and grateful for your story and your presence, and everybody's story is very moving. And the experiences I have are more that I am part of it, or that it's in me, rather than something that appears to me outside of me. And sometimes it's completely angelic, sometimes it's that I'm right there with God and seeing something from God's eyes in a very powerful way. And then sometimes, and I wasn't raised Christian, but it often does feel very Christian. It's sort of this heavy Christian language pops into my head. And then sometimes, more rarely, it's something that I don't understand, and I've gone to Aaron and Mimi to help me understand it. One was that my head was like a bull head, and I had these big head, and I had these horns, and I was holding on to the horns with both arms, and I was it was intense. I was like locked in, but full of all this intense power, energy, and just, it was sort of like in me for, 5 minutes. And so I asked for their help trying to decipher it. But it usually doesn't appear outside. It's something that comes right inside. And thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I think I still have a lot of baby noses going in me, and I don't let those energies take form. I don't think I trust people enough. I remember in my accounting days when I would get things into such small bits, they were worthless that I don't want to do that, but I don't. I can experience it more like waves of experience coming over me. Like what popped for me was the time when Yan Chen was here, and it was a Saturday night. He was talking, and the Chinese embassy had just been bombed by the U.S. in wherever it was in Eastern Europe, and he was getting up there and he's given this. I thought I was hearing Chairman Mao, and you're over there wrestling, saying, "I got 200 people here, and he's got to listen to all this shit." And I'm saying, how am I going to hold on to this guy? You know, I mean, it's really, I love the power of it, but here he is. You know. So I just sat there and I said, "I want to kill you." And that energy was that strong. I said, "I want to kill you. I want to kill you." So the day went on, and he started talking a little softer. But the next morning, I woke up, and the whole room was just filled with light. It was just, and I think you had the same experience, because when you came in, you talked about it. It was, well, that's the same thing I had.
I said born in the USA.
Yeah. But actually, I think that me getting into that rage, because that's what you were talking before, but something about teenage years is when I really broke through. And I could break through the things that were the bullshit that was coming at me. I lived in a Catholic ghetto, and everything was shoved down my throat. And just to be able to break through and be who I was, no matter what I was. I almost got killed several times. Almost killed people several times too, and just lucky that I didn't. But there was so much life there. That was definitely archetypal in the sense of the power. What I've been experiencing here this morning is kind of the same thing I did last week. When we talk about healing and talk about bringing someone's present, future, and past together, there's something about bringing in the past that makes it so powerful. That all those stories that we carry around that are based on the past can be dissolved. And last week I felt it, and several years ago I had an experience where I was feeling bad about someone who had died, and I had done something and I wanted to rectify it, and it just came to me, well, I could do it now, and I did. He's reborn someplace, and I could hold that, and I could just feel the whole thing being rectified. But I really love this convergence of time and making it so sacred and so powerful that nothing is stuck anymore. So, and thank you for sharing your space with us. That's just wonderful. I didn't know what the hell I was. I came in to see Rudy too, and he helped me put. It's this way. I'm a therapist too, and people come into me and they're so wise. They just don't have the words to put on it. I say those are the folks who were raised by wolves. And I just love working with them because they do something. I say, "Oh, that's that." And wow, it's just so wonderful that we can put language on so we can manage it. So thanks for sharing that.
I just feel so blown away by all the sharing, and thank you for being here, Mary. The love, my heart just burst open when you started speaking about the love, the three of you. And as somebody who, this word that I will not be able to pronounce either, that you gave us, Rudy, about intensity, I feel so resonant to that because I think that's so much of, my journey, maybe all of our journey, and that's part of what's so wonderful about this sharing. It's like hearing each story in some ways. I know we don't dwell in the story, but hearing the story is like the validation of the intensity that my soul needs, because so much of the time I feel like I'm a fish out of water. I was born into a family where I felt like a fish out of the water, and so to be in the water with other fish. I found my school, Finding Nemo, Maybe I'm Dora. I did win the Constant Kibitzer Award in junior high school. I'm so glad you're laughing. It's nothing like it. So the story that bubbled up in me listening to everybody is, I spent a lot of time in the ashram too, in the City Yoga ashram. I think I basically grew up there later in my adulthood than many of the other people in this room. But I remember on the threshold of my son's bar mitzvah, I was in an intensive and I just prayed that I could enter the heart. And I was just fixated on the 6-pointed star in the heart, and I put that on his invitation, a lotus with a 6-pointed star. That was on the invitation, and I didn't know what I was asking for, because shortly thereafter I wound up in a hospital for 2 weeks on an IV with an emergency surgery on my throat. And I now see that that was the opening of my throat chakra and the capacity to know what the heart energy is. And I remember early on when I came here, I sat with you, Skip, and I sat across from you, and all of a sudden I felt like, that's what the 6-pointed star is. It's the descent and the ascent. It's like I got it in the body through the heart. And when I went through that surgery, it was on a parathyroid gland, which regulates calcium, and calcium is the main communicator between the muscular system and the nervous system. And so after this surgery, my body was very out of sorts, and I was paralyzed. And it happened in the middle of the night. And as I was coming through the paralysis, I just started toning, thanks to knowing Patricia. And this incredible array of color came through. It was like from outside of the usual color spectrum. It was like that ultraviolet purple. And the more I toned and the more that color came through, the more I could find movement. And I called my husband and said, "Can you come down here?" And ironically, he had the biggest trial he had ever had. And the next day he said, "Are you sure you need me to come?" I said, "Yes," which was a big deal, because this was like a growth on my throat, and it was all about not asking for what I need. And so I was holding his hand and looking into his eyes and toning, and this color was coming through, and each time I would tone, I could feel more movement coming and with more color. And then I had this vision of Baba, and he came to me on a horse and he said, "Just get on." And it, he carried me through, and there was more to it, but that, I'm just giving you sort of some of the highlights. And I've told a few people that story, and what I realized as I was listening to everybody today was how, my task is to embody that kind of light, day to day, moment to moment. And I'm reflecting on the conversation we had last week about what it is to sit with people who are so in their analytic mind, there's no self there, and like how it is to find that light, to attune to that vibration so that maybe it can get through. And that's just one particular circumstance, but one that I find more challenging than others. So thank you.
I just want to talk about an experience that I had yesterday and last night. Just every day, every morning, I go for a walk in the woods and I pray and I give thanks for the earth and the sun and the sky and the stones in the earth, and then all the beings and the trees, and I also open to the primordial field, and then to nature, and then it ends with, in part, this opening to all the beings of light that walk with me, and I express my deep gratitude for all the beings of light that walk with me. And I realized yesterday that as I'm saying that every morning, I'm sort of experiencing those beings of light as walking with me, as opposed to being of me and me of them. And so last night when I was meditating before I went to bed, I just really opened myself, which I do sometimes, into my bedroom and my surroundings, but to really embody and include those beings of light that walk with me and that are of me and I am of them. And it got so much, at first, that brilliant electric blue, and then into all that luminous darkness that just went on and on. It was wonderful.
I think it came to me earlier today when you talked about baby gnosis. It brought me back to a childhood experience, and what it was like being a child in my family. It was very, very intimidating and very scary, and actually a lot of terror involved. And so naturally I turned inward to find some refuge. And I found within me a relationship with someone, something, because I would say he didn't have a face or a personality, but it was relational, and that relationship had elements of a mother's love and like a father's strength and a wisdom and a power and a confidence. And I would often go there to find refuge. And as I became enculturated with the Catholic religion, I gave this place and this person, who actually right from the beginning had elements of me in there, so it was like I couldn't quite distinguish between myself and this relationship with whoever and whatever this was. And I began to call this person or this relationship Jesus, because what I was presented with in terms of who he was supposed to be in history, these qualities. And so I would often go to this place throughout my childhood and teenage years when things were tough. And as I came here and I began to experience this inner life of my own, and that name of Jesus began to fade into this broader, deeper scope of wisdom and light and awareness. And unbelievable to me and really hard to say, actually, I became to experience that was me. And still am exploring that idea and that relationship with that part of me.
I think I'm becoming more aware that I've always lived in the archetypical realm, but I didn't have a name for it. And I guess first it was through Catholic iconography and ritual, and then dance took over, and I thought to be a cool modern dancer and a hippie, you had to throw all that away. But I realize now, looking back, that I never did. And, when I think of my first modern dance teacher saying, we weren't allowed to move unless something moved us, and we had to move from the inside out. And we also had to do a lot of improvisations where we felt other bodies that we were moving with. And so we often moved eyes closed, and then we would have to even describe what movement we felt. And this was, for a long time when I first started coming here, I couldn't integrate the aesthetic with the spiritual, and I kept trying to keep them so separate. And but that's probably, I consider, my own realization and growth to really, that split has dissolved. And so when I'm having experiences of the light, and these days mostly darkness, and it's not frightening. It's comforting, and it just envelops me, and that's when I feel the inside to inside relationship to space and light and rhythm and all the energies. And then the Divine Mother just comes up, I don't see her, but I just feel her in my body. And lately I have been letting that go into movement, and it's sort of bringing dance back to me, but coming out of this grief and this trauma, and from a completely different place. And then, I have also reflected on that moment that you've helped me with, Rudy, when I did feel the dismemberment in here several years before my husband died. And all I can say is that now it's the energies putting me back together again with so much. It's overwhelming wisdom. Not now I'm this wise person and I'll tell you what to do with your life, but it's it's the wisdom of knowingness, and it's just a withinness of the darkness is light and the light is dark, and that's what's holding me. It's holding me together, and so it's like I feel like I contain all the archetypes. I'm just one big archetypal being. And sometimes I feel like I'm going to explode with it. And sometimes I'm paralyzed in the grief. And then the next minute I'm dancing around the kitchen. Oh, okay.
Totally beautiful. And then Laura. And then I think we're going to stop. And but next week we're all going to sit in exactly the same place. Same place. Next week. We're going to finish this side today. And then do something in between this. So, Bishop.
I'd like to say something about the vehicles of visual and auditory. For me, the auditory has always been the most accessible since I was little. And yet, the visual has been developing in me. And recently I've entered a period of great expansion on my path, and I see blue light all the time now. It's usually the form of the blue pearl, as one tradition calls it, but it can be other forms of blue light. And I know beyond the shadow of a doubt when I see that there is some truth present or something that is being affirmed. It is an absolutely steadfast presence. And recently I was in a very deep state, and I was led through an experience from my past, from another incarnation that I needed to understand. And I really had a visual breakthrough because the being that appeared to me led me through this experience with tremendous love. And it was a female great being who was a combination of several different beings that have been present to me. And when I was in Lourdes with Carolyn, I had a meditation in which at the end, all of the traditions I've known merged into one. So this being was a combination, and she led me through this horrifying experience. And because she did, my body is now opening up in ways I never could have imagined. And there's awareness coming, not in one shred from thinking. It's all coming from my body. As far as auditory, I will receive messages at different times, just when I need to hear them. And one particular remarkable story, because it includes embodiment, is that one time I was performing in a large room with maybe 500, 600 people, and I was part of a musical group. And there was a celebration the night before, and sometime earlier in the afternoon, the day before, someone had said, "Oh, you're going to sing this song with so-and-so." And I thought, okay, then we'll rehearse it sometime this evening. So no one said anything the rest of the evening. So the next day we're in the program, it's unfolding, there's a producer on a headset, and suddenly someone thrusts some music in front of me. And the woman I was singing this with was on the other side of the room, and I could not see her. And it was a very complicated Indian song. And the guy who wrote the music scribbles. I could hardly read his writing. So I see a pattern in the introduction, and they say, play this 12 times. And I'm thinking, I hope I see the notes, but I did. So then I hear the producer on the headset say, "We're featuring the flute on this." I had never played it. So I put aside all terror and I just asked for grace. And I started to play. And I got 1 through 11. And right before the 12th, a voice from my belly said, "Don't play the next one." If I had played the next one, it would have ruined the entire song. So I jumped down to the melody and it was perfect. And that was definitely a great being helping me. And it wasn't just for me, it was so that everyone's experience was seamless and was not interrupted.
Beautiful. I'll just say, just recently I've become obsessed with that book that was also a movie recently called The Martian, with Matt Damon and the astronaut that's abandoned on an alien planet and has to learn how to survive by his own, both science and this is focused on the science side. And I keep obsessing and rereading it and watching the movie when I can and trying to figure it out. And I finally realized, of course I'm empathizing, I'm relating to that, and that, feeling abandoned down here, and where are my people, and who's going to help me? Okay, I'll help myself. And, thanks to my great teacher, Elizabeth, again brought me to Rudy and all of you, I'm learning a new language. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Rudy?
Yes.
I won't be here next week.
Why don't you come share them? Okay? Great.
Also, I wasn't sure I'd be able to hold this all week within me, but I'm hearing your stories from your heart, and I'm able to hold it, you all, and your just beautiful, beautiful stories. And I just want to briefly tell you about an incident which opened my heart for the first time. And I had read a novel on vacation in which both protagonists, who were sailors, died. The husband, while rescuing his wife, who had been unfaithful. I was so upset about the ending of the book. The next day I was on the beach at a resort, and I hear these two men way out yelling, "Help!" And I would have been voted least likely to go rescue. I especially the way I was dressed, but I grabbed something nearby, a float, and I swam out to them, and it was quite a ways. And I'm not a very good swimmer, but I know now that I was in a state of timeless awareness. In fact, I was told it took us 45 minutes to get back. And all these people on the beach telling us, and I thought, why are they waving at us? They were trying to indicate which way to go. And as we were hanging on to this little float, the three of us, my heart opened in such a way that I felt I could not contain it very long. And at the time, I did not possess the capacity to do that. And a few years later, I was in Miatek's office, and he had an image on the wall of Jesus with the heart chakra and rays coming out. And as he was healing me, as he was healing me, I felt those rays enter my heart and again open it up in that same way. And I thought, what's happening? I'm not Catholic. But I was brought to this story because of the Catholic awakenings. And I just feel such gratitude. And for the last few years, I've been living in this ridiculously giddy joy all the time. And I realized I don't worry anymore. I'm concerned about my husband's health, but I don't worry. And I'm just so grateful for everyone in this room, and I'm so grateful for the capacity of this being able to hold all this love. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes? Okay, please.
And you all know that I speak very quickly, so I did have a long story that was great, and I may do it in November, but I'm leaving Friday. I'm going to be 75 in October, and I'm going with a man that I've known since I was 4, and we're driving across country and seeing national parks. And I just 23rd of October when you're having the seminar here. Yeah, and I'll see all 4 of my children and their spouses, which you all know I love, and 7 grandchildren. So the story I could tell that brought me to be able to say this is wonderful, and you can just all kind of think what it might be. Well, okay, short form. I am one of these unusual people that had a wonderful childhood. I mean, I played out in the woods. I had 3 brothers that loved me. We didn't fight. We had great food. We had, it was during the war right here. And so, I was one of those obnoxious people in high school that was the cheerleader and on the court and the secretary, all that stuff. And so I thought this is really, by the way, I traveled around the world before I was 20. So fine, nothing. Then I got married. And spent the next 30 years in an upside down mode of what I had spent. You know, you have to clean a bathroom more than once a year, and you had to learn to cook. And, you know, I had a child in Germany, and all I prayed for was for the toilet bowl not to freeze so that when I peed, I could hear it, and because it was that cold, and I had to chop wood. Anyway. Rudy knows the story, and I'll jump through when I was ready to leave him, trying to get the courage, because this wasn't working. It wasn't fun anymore. And I went to Rudy's group, and, you know, you go around, you say what's going on, and then I was saying, you know, I still haven't gotten a divorce, and I had been separated a long time, and blah, blah, blah. So Rudy goes, you just wait out in the hallway. You all know up on the 3rd floor of the hallway. Okay. So I go out to the hallway, and I'm standing there. And I'm waiting for him or someone to come and get me. Time's going by. And then the light that you all are talking about goes like, holy shit, you have to open the door. And so that was my turning point. It's about me taking care of myself, not someone else doing it. So I came around to it in kind of a funny way. I was glad I was brought up Unitarian up here on 16th and Harvard, because I had lots of choices. I didn't have, no one was ever telling me what to do or how to do it. But I feel fabulous going into my 75th year. I couldn't be happier. I can't wait to see what happens. Yeah. And may all of you feel the same way at 75.
And a new grandchild yesterday.
Oh, yes. I have a 2.5-year-old and a day grandchild.
Wow.
Me while I was leading meditation on Monday.
Oh, total cool.
I got the little ding and I thought it was the man I'm traveling with, because he gives me a little good morning, and I went like, I'll get it later. And then, she was born at 7:01 this time on Monday. That's awesome.
Total cool.
So, thank you all for your support,
Thank you, guys.
your stories, your experiences. We're all part of it. It's all us. Yeah. Thank you, Rudy.
Thank you, guys. So we're going to sit just for a moment. And I think, Mary, you wanted to say one or two things?
I do. First of all, I want to thank Rudy for having me here, and all of you for coming here and sharing your stories. As I travel around now, I came out finally as a mystic 2 years ago. This is my 3rd year. I leave the nunnery during monsoon season and come out and travel around. I released my book, and everywhere I go, people are really impressed with somebody willing to stand on a stage and tell their stories about these unusual events. And I'm really struck by how awesome it is to sit in a room and everybody just open up about their experiences, and you guys have this space to share so openly. When I'm on tour, after I give my talk, people line up to meet me and have signed their book or whatever, and they always, every single time, there are many people in the line that go, I've been having these experiences too. And they just keep their secret. And people in the near-death experience community have kept their secret. People who know about me, I get these emails all the time from people saying how empowering it is to hear the stories. And even at the nunnery where I live, it's a Buddhist nunnery. We're surrounded. I'm 45 minutes from the Dalai Lama, and I've met with the Karmapa and other people. It is not traditionally acceptable for people to talk about their experiences. There's a lot of suppression, and in those communities, it's considered something prideful, and they don't want to encourage that or whatever. But my response is always, well, what would have happened if Buddha hadn't said anything, or if Jesus hadn't said anything? I mean, somebody's got to speak up, right? So that's the first thing. I just want to say it's really so empowering to other people when you share your stories. And I hope that you don't just do that in this room, but in your practice, in your communities, in your families, and other places, because you never know what seeds you're planting in other people and what doors you're opening up and permission to sort of explore and be known. So I want to say that. And then secondly, it's also been so beautiful to hear the actual experiences. The range of things that I have had happen, and it's almost entirely uncontrolled for 15.5 years now, have ranged. Usually about 90% of the time what happens is that I go to the origins of some big divine truth event. The origins, for example, of Christianity. The very first event was going into the body of Jesus at his moment of death on the cross, and then seeing in that moment everything in the evolution of man that had happened to that point and exactly the mindset that caused that, and then the experience of the crucifixion, and then the evolution of our world from that point forward. So it was the origin, it was me understanding the world before Christianity, with the birth of Christianity and the evolution of Christianity from the vantage point of Christ. And this is the sort of thing that happens to me, going into the mind of Buddha at his first moment of enlightenment, going into the what we would consider the primordial ground, the absolute nothing, the exquisite field of potential, and that coming to life in the first speck of conscious awareness. The origins of fear, the origins of thought, the origins of all of these different things. So I have an enormous continuum of sight, in addition to being able to access the field of energy that we exist in but cannot normally perceive through our normal senses. And throughout everything, along the entire continuum, there is nothing but validation of the love that is our source, that is our force, that is our life being. And that all of the experiences in the different iterations verify that but they also verify the goodness in us in this separation consciousness as well. And so there's both wisdom and nourishment in every kind of thing. And you'll be interested to know that my very first thought ever in awareness was that I am goodness and I want to be all that I am. So it is always a validation of our goodness, and it's so nice to hear it. Again, I always say that we're the ordinary people with extraordinary access, and it's really a blessing to share this with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, let's pause for a moment. Mary will be talking this Friday at the Friday morning meditation seminar, and I know all you guys aren't going to get in your car and drive 1,000 miles to come here, but you can come on Zoom, and so if you need the code, you can email me or Tom for the code here, or Elizabeth, okay, to get the code to come on. King of Kings?
Lutheran Church in Fairfax on Sunday.
On Sunday, okay, at the church, King of Kings.
6 p.m. You can go on my website, unwittingmystic.com, and under upcoming events, you'll see the address.
Yeah, I saw it written someplace, yeah.
Mary, could you, I didn't bring a checkbook today. Could you entrust some books to Rudy that we could buy?
Sure, of course.
You a check because
yes, absolutely.
I don't have cash or check.
Yes.
That's a great idea, great idea.
You can order it from Amazon.com or my website, either one. It's you can get it on e-reader or print, either one.
What time is Friday?
Friday starts at 7:30, and so I'd come on a little early, like say 10, 20 after or so, just to get. So let's see what else. Oh, that also we're going to have the speaker come. The Father Tiso is coming. I'm forgetting the dates at this moment, but he's going to come to the seminar on Tuesday, October 23rd. He'll come to the seminar. That's Sunday. 19th. Come to the seminar, and he'll be talking, I think, about the rainbow body and the embodiment of light that day from a Dzogchen point of view. Then Sunday, then Friday, he will give the meditation at the seminar, the Friday morning meditation seminar. And again, you can come online if you want. And that is going to be some practices in the light, basically using some of these Gnostic and Dzogchen practices, okay? That'll be a practice session. We're not going to have him come on Dakini Day on Saturday. We may not even have Dakini Day on Saturday. But on Sunday, and I think it's from 10 to 1, he'll be giving a longer workshop, and I'll give a little introduction to him and this sort of work. And that will be actually on this intertwining of Gnosticism and Christianity, rather Gnosticism, Christian Gnosticism, and Dzogchen, and this whole mixture that's coming out of the light, and when the light came into this tradition. And again, origins are really useful to know. When you touch the origin, one thing follows after another, as they say. So I would really come to these if you can, for sure. But the one thing is this: we are getting booked up, and we're not going to do the big thing of having cameras going up to the first floor or third floor. We're just going to have it just in this room. We're not going to do the big thing, okay? So I would love for you guys to come, and then we'll tell everybody else no. So because we can only have so much room, but you have to sign up with some immediacy because it's going very, very fast. You're going to email. Just email. We will record the program, and we'll record them. I don't know if we're going to broadcast them or not, though, but even if we do, we'll charge $50 because this priest has no money. Okay, I happen to know he has not a cent. He's living in Italy, some little parish. He's a brilliant, brilliant person, but he's not an academic. He's just a brilliant person. Like many people, they do their own thing. So we're going to try, and also if anybody can make any contributions, you let me know what the contributions to the Washington Center for Conscious Studies. You'll get a little note back that's tax deductible, but we'd like to give him some moolah if we can. Okay?
Rudy, I think Sharon had an envelope upstairs.
Okay, there's an envelope upstairs. Great. Write the check if you want that's to the Washington Center for Conscious Studies. That's for Sunday. And here there'll be the regular what we're paying here will go to him also. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming. I'd like to thank you guys for coming. Let's just close our eyes just for one moment, or open our eyes, whatever we want to do. And we'll extend the light into each other's presence. And we'll extend the light into each other's past. And we'll extend the light into each other's future. And then we'll extend the light into our country, present, and then the past, and the future. And let's focus on Syria just for a moment, into the present moment of Syria. And into the present of their past. Into the presence of their future. We'll listen to this mantra, Om Ahung Bodhicitta Ma Sukha Yana Datu Ah. Thank you guys. See you all next week. And we'll take the same little places we're sitting today. Hasta la vista.
You know about this thing. This is a thing. Yeah.